Welcome to Tech Startup Stories, hosted by Natalie Binns. This is the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of the B2B startup world.
Hi, I'm Natalie Binns, and after many years as a marketing leader in the B2B SaaS industry, I set up Hey Gabbi to support startups and scale-ups with their go-to-market and growth needs. I work with so many great founders, and that's led me to want to hear their stories and share them with others. And that's why I set up this podcast. So let's get into this week's podcast. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's podcast. This week, it's a little different. I think I'm going to be under the spotlight. So I'm very excited to welcome my guest host, Donna St. Donna and I have known each other for quite a few years. We both work in the tech industry, and she is a marketing guru extraordinaire and has been in marketing leadership for many years, a mentor of mine, and an avid listener of the podcast, or so she tells me. Thank you for joining me on the show, and thank you for being the guest host.
So thank you, Natalie. So I'm going to start with a softball, if that's okay. I've known you, as you mentioned, for 15, maybe 20 years. And I know you as a marketer. And now you are this, fabulous podcast host. What made you even think about, doing a podcast and this topic of tech startup? How did you come on that particular topic?
It's a good question. And I think the podcast has just kind of become my passion project. It started because I've spent many years working with startup founders, either as an employee or more recently working with them for their go-to-market and marketing strategy. And every single person that I've met has had such a very varied and different story. And as such, I think, for me, I just wanted to, be nosy and learn more about their stories, but also I guess, to just share those stories with the world, because I think there's this misconception that founders have to fit a certain mold. They have to be, really well connected and really wealthy and very technical, and they have to have come from a particular school and have had certain levels of experience, perhaps worked at some of the big tech companies like Microsoft, Oracle, etc. But everyone that I meet is so different, and their story is so different, that I think it's really important to kind of dig into that, because I think more and more individuals are either leaving the workforce to become a founder, and so many of my network have gone on to do that, or they're kind of coming in, they've done a little bit of experience in the business world and starting out that way, or they've always wanted to be a founder and they've looked up to, startup founders that never finished university or college and just went straight into it. So every story is really different. And the idea did kind of come to me the start of the year. And I do feel like every man and his dog has done a podcast this year. And for me, it was quite self-serving. It was just really, I wanted to hear those stories. I wanted to talk to those people. And when I first started out, to be really frank, I didn't know how many episodes I'd be able to record, how many people that would even share their stories with me, and whether I'd even be able to fill a podcast. And I've been so blessed with speaking to some amazing individuals that have given me the time of day, and it's kind of just snowballed from there.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. One of the things that I've noticed is that you do interview such a variety of different types of founders and so many different industries, so many different areas. But there's got to be some kind of theme that is running through these conversations. Can you talk to us about a little bit of what is common with all of these different founders?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think I did the count, and it was about 13 different countries that the founders have come from, so all over the world. And I'm still trying to get more from other countries. They are from all different walks of life, all different ages, ethnicities, experiences, backgrounds. And I think the common theme is that the individuals that I speak with have got a real passion for whatever it is they're doing. So every founder truly believes in the problem that they're solving. And they feel very fully hearted in that process. They really are there to solve that problem for their end users and their customers. And it surprised me because I kind of felt that I was going to come across people that were like, well, I'm only in it for the money. I'm just in it for the cash. I just want to make loads of money and then buy a yacht and off I sail. Everyone that I speak to, for whatever reason that they came into that idea or however they, kind of figured out what they wanted to build, there was usually an emotional connection to it. Either something that they'd experienced in their private life or they'd experienced in their professional life or they'd seen other people dealing with. And so it hasn't been a case where they've just gone, oh, all the money's in this industry, that's what we're going to do. There's been a real passion for doing that.
Interesting. So now that they all have a passion, for delivering their mission to the world, what do you think the common maybe challenges that they have as a founder? Or do you find that there's common challenges across all industries?
It is interesting because, I've interviewed people from energy tech to martech to cybersecurity. There's quite a lot of cybersecurity folks to HR tech and fintech being a big one as well. I think the common challenges, and I see this a lot with most startups, is there's never enough hours in the day. There's never enough resources and there's never enough funding to really do all the things that they want to do. It's that same old adage of, if I won the lottery, this is what I would do. And I think for most people, what they're trying to do is be creative and work with what they have. And I think when it comes to it, a lot of people struggle with getting funding if they're going for a angel investment or VC backing, despite the fact that the world is, telling us that there's plenty of funds available. There's obviously certain industries that lean into that more, particularly around the AI piece, which is obviously super popular. But we've shifted. So I'd say probably 5-10 years ago, funding was given out and more funding was given out to help businesses grow. So it was growth at any cost. We'll just throw money at it, hire more people, spend more money. But now investors are being more cautious. They want to see businesses be lean, businesses automate, and businesses do things in a smart way, run experiments, see the results, and grow that way. And I think more effort and energy has come into play where businesses really need to lock down their positioning, who they're targeting, so their segmentation and their ideal customer profile. And so there is a lot more lean into some of the traditional marketing methods that have been previously shied away from or not as known by founders. I think it's more prevalent that I speak to founders where marketing isn't in their background, but they have done their due diligence and have learned more about what it means to identify who your target audience is and how to go after them.
So now I see even more of a connection between what your background in marketing and the tech startup founders. But I think of you as an entrepreneur, Natalie. Obviously, you have your own company, Hey Gabbi. So how has interviewing and speaking with all of these different varied founders, how has that changed your idea of what early stage entrepreneurship is like?
I think the main thing is that I'm not alone, or we're not alone. And this is a theme that I kind of come across a lot. This is a theme that I come across a lot with everybody that I speak to. They'll hold their hands up and say, hey, I haven't got it all figured out. I'm learning as I go. I'm growing and I'm being humble and authentic when I do that. And I think for me, it's it's not very easy to be an employee, but it's easier to be under the security of employment where, the business revenue isn't on you, the marketing for the business isn't on you, the finance, other people do those roles. But when you become a founder of a business, whether it's tech or whether it's a services business, a lot of that responsibility does fall for you. Even if you grow to the point where you can hire people, you're still going to be kept up at night. You're still going to be thinking about the bottom line. How are we going to grow? How do we make sure that we serve our customers to the best of our ability? Because that's really what founders care about. For me personally, I'm extremely passionate about serving my customers and making sure that they see the value, and get that value from everything that we do. Because, ultimately, we're all in this business where you can spend a ton of money on marketing, but the best marketing you can get is, referrals and people that can share the stories about how your technology or your services have made a huge impact to their business.
Interesting, interesting. So we're talking about marketing. So let's continue down that path. How have these founder stories that you're partaking in now? How have they changed the way you in your business advise clients? I'm sure they've had some kind of influence in your deliverables and what you know that founders need that maybe you didn't know before. So how has that changed how you conduct your business?
Yeah, I think having an open mind is probably the biggest thing. And I guess for me personally, every single client that I work with and every senior leader that I come across and people that I meet through networking and also through the podcast shape my learning and my education of the world, and every company is different. So my clients are all extremely different in what they do, how they operate. And so every time I'm working with somebody new, I'm taking on their experiences and learning from that. And being open-minded that, nobody has all of the answers, because I can't go into a business and say, hey, well, I worked for this cybersecurity company and we did this, this, and this. And so that's going to work at your company. Or we did this 5 months ago, 6 months ago, 12 months ago. So if we just copy and paste, it's going to work now. The reality is that marketing has got harder because we as consumers, whether we're a B2B consumer or a B2C consumer, where the lines are incredibly blurred these days, we gather information in a different way. Our attention span is shorter. We're very focused on ourselves. We're quite insular and selfish in that respect as buyers. And so we don't have the patience. In the same way as we don't have the patience to wait for a dial-up connection, we expect Wi-Fi to be immediate and 5G to be excellent everywhere we go. It's the same when it comes to, our results with marketing. We expect things to work quicker, and that isn't always the case. So for me, I think the key thing that I've picked up is be experimental and bring your experience, but be open-minded and be creative. And that's one thing that I love the most about go-to-market and marketing is we are problem solvers. I've had this debate with people whether marketing is an art form and a science, and actually, arguably, it kind of sits in between the two. There's an art to it, there's a creativity element to it, and it's perceptive, and you hope that your marketing activities and messaging and everything grabs the attention and the eye of the target audience. But you also then need to think of the scientific approach and run those experiments and see what resonates and what doesn't across all the different channels. And I think, it's only going to continue that way as we blur this line between, a B2B buyer, buying in a particular way, and a B2C buyer, especially because, there's no clear gap these days between when you're working and when you're not. You're kind of always going to have that connection to your day job, and especially with social media, and it's very hard to switch off. And so you're always going to be seeing things that grab your attention, that bring you back to that work mindset. So for all marketers, whether you're in a B2B marketing team environment, whether you're fractional, whether you're running an agency supporting people like we are, you have to continuously learn, adapt, and experiment.
Absolutely, absolutely. We've had this conversation many times about working for folks, whether they be CMOs or CEOs, who have very particular ideas about what marketing is and what you should do. And we laugh many times that, everybody is a marketer. We would never think of going to the head of engineering and telling him how to do his job. We would never think of going to the CFO and tell him, hey, I've got a great idea on how you should be, redoing your bookkeeping. Yet everyone feels free to let marketing know about great ideas that they have, and they always have an opinion about what you should and could be doing. So how do you deal with founders who have preconceived notions on what marketing is and what marketing can do, as opposed to what they actually can do? So how do you deal with those misconceptions, if you will?
That's a really, really good question. And I think the reality is we're all subjected to marketing every single day of our lives. So unlike some people, like, to be honest, I have an accountant because anything to do with finance just makes me very uncomfortable, and I have to do it as a business owner, but I try and avoid that. You can't really avoid marketing. So you're always going to have some level of understanding from whatever perspective, whether it's digital, whether you've done a lot of trade shows and events, there's always going to be that kind of level of understanding. There is a real deep dive education element when it comes to working with founders, because ultimately what they care about is making their business successful. And so it becomes a question of, how much they need to be involved in it and how much they are willing to kind of step back and trust, which is always a hard thing when you bring somebody new into your baby, your business, at any role, whether they're an engineer by trade and they bring in a chief engineer or a CTO or whatever, they're always going to kind of have I'm just watching what you're doing, I'm an expert in that. And I think with marketing, there is an expectation that they know enough to be able to oversee it. And I interviewed somebody today, a very, very smart woman who's going to be in one of the episodes in the new year. And she said that the advice that she had been given by her father, who is also a business owner, is know a little bit about everything, be a generalist, because what that does is it enables you to kind of keep an eye on what's going on and be able to oversee it. But God forbid something happened to the person that you put in charge, you can kind of oversee it and take it over. Marketing has always been an area where there's been a lot of spotlight on it, and part of that is because it is a cost center and there's a huge amount of investment that goes into marketing, regardless as to what your budget is. Any spend is considered an investment, and everyone that puts money into marketing expects to get a return on that. The reality is there's different types of marketing strategies. So what I do is when I work with a founder, firstly, I've really got to dig in to understand what they're trying to do, because every founder has different objectives. For example, I want to get funding. My main focus for marketing is really to get investment. Well, that's a very different play to driving revenue for a bootstrapped business. In some cases, they might want to do both. I really want to grow the channel. Our go-to-market is going to be driving channel businesses to sell our products and services. Whatever the real core business objectives are, we have to start there. Once we start there, I'll then dig in and really try and get to, what they've done so far. Like, how have they found that target audience? Because most businesses will tell you, oh, this is who we go after. And it's my job to kind of ask the difficult questions as to, well, why them? Why have you chosen them? What is it about them? And what data do you have to back that up, that they are the right people? Because, most people will have a perception in their mind as to who they should be going after, who they should be selling to, but it could be wildly different to where there's product market fit. I did a podcast interview with Derry Holt in season 1. And he talks about the fact that in their early days, they had a very particular target audience that they went after. And it was only after a huge regroup and change in the business and opening their eyes that they very nearly missed the opportunity to narrow in on their now target audience, which has helped them go from strength to strength and grow their business. So it really comes back to getting to know the founder, finding out what their problems are, finding out why they're doing things in that particular way and challenging them in a positive way, and talking them through different opportunities and different ways of doing this. Where I find the most synergy is where we partner and we work together, because it's my job to get value for them. If I'm not adding value to their business, then I'm not doing my job effectively, and my business is not supporting them. So I really need to work with them and partner with them so that I can be successful to help them be successful in their business. And what I really care about is their long-term numbers, how they can grow year on year, how they can grow their team, how they can get more investment if that's their investment process and their journey. But really what it comes down to is my joy and my passion is to see those businesses go from strength to strength.
Really, really very interesting. And, we've talked many times about how bifurcated marketing needs to be at all times. You always have to have your 90-day plan, what's going to happen in this quarter, and also how am I going to build this company over time, and what do I need to do from a marketing perspective 12, 18, 24 months in advance. So how do you help founders juggle those two, juggle the, I need a demand gen right away, as opposed to, you need to build with thought leadership, build your brand over time as well. How do you help them to juggle those two?
Well, it's a real balance. And again, depending on the stage of the business, we're dealing with a number of different things. So, if they're very early stage and they've got seed funding, it is really a case of, well, let's look at what the short-term goals are. We need a short-term plan, but we also need to have a strategy for the longer-term plan. In some cases, it's actually very hard for businesses to think even further out than 12 months. 12 months is a long time in startup world because everything's moving so fast. So what we tend to focus on is, the long-term strategy. These are the activities, the tactics, the things that we're going to be doing that are going to help you next year, the year after. And some of those things might be things like, Mr. or Mrs. Founder or co-founder, you need to build your personal brand because, your personal brand is going to help bring your company to the forefront. You need to be as many places as you can, and that will help put you in front of not just investors, but also potential customers, and also raise your brand awareness. But at the same time, we need to be really focusing in on, right, how do we win some customers? Because in many cases in the startup community, what can break a business is cash flow. And so, we really need to solve that problem in the short term. So if you're going after enterprise businesses, you need to be investing now in the time, the energy, and putting some money aside, because those sales cycles could be 12, 18 months, 2 years. But if you're doing more transactional, perhaps you've got a PLG model, you really need to be driving that awareness to get more signups and free trials so that we can then put the energy and time into converting those into paid customers. Ultimately, I think the value in marketing is to find and retain loyal customers. And that really is what it's not about finding as many net new logos as you can get. and be transactional. It's about finding the right people who are going to stay loyal to your business in the long run, because that's what's going to help you grow. The more customers that you have re-signing and working with you in the long run, the more likely you are to grow, because we know it's really expensive. It's very resource heavy and time consuming to bring in just one new customer. So when you've got that new customer, they have to be the right type of customer. And your energy needs to be, how do we get them to stay? How do we make our product sticky enough that they're going to stick around?
Yeah. No, that's really important. And, we're seeing that a lot now, in the new world. A brand land and expand strategy is really critical for longer term success, as you talked about. And a lot of people are focused more on the top of the funnel, if you will, or getting new customers in and new business in, but taking care of customers and making sure that customers are your best referral. So making sure that your customers are happy with what you do really is a key to longer term success. So good on that. So let's switch a little bit and talk about what you're thinking about about how founders are managing their time. So, founders, I've learned from your podcast, a lot of times you are the everything. You have to know a little bit about everything. How do you advise founders as to when to bring other people in, experts, for example, in a particular place, whether it be customer success or marketing or sales or anything? How do they think about, when is it time to grow?
That's a great question. I was actually having this conversation with a founder last week about this. And I think I've always been a long-term thinker. So I'm always thinking about the today, but I'm always planning ahead for the future. What are we doing, down the track? And so when you're in your early days, you are wearing many hats, you are doing lots of things, you are doing the sales job, you are doing the marketing, you are doing a bit of everything. And the reality is every founder needs to have a plan. And it could be a basic piece of paper plan, but they need to understand at what point does my revenue allow me to then hire in? Because I might not have come from a sales background, but I'm selling because I'm super passionate about what I do. Nobody knows more about this than I do. And I've got a great network. And so I'm going to continue selling. But what is that plan to then bring people in to support you? Because, as you start to grow and as you start to expand your brand awareness and your lead gen activities, and people start to hear of you, and you start, that inbound engine starts to reap the rewards, you've got to deal with it. Because the worst thing that can happen is you start to see success and suddenly you can't cope with it. You're dropping the ball, you're not responding, you're not qualifying opportunities quick enough, and there's nobody to engage. And I've seen that happen. And there's actually a startup, I'm not going to name them, that, literally had said to me, I've told my sales guy that, we can't bring in any more deals this quarter. I mean, that is literally the dream for so many founders, to be in that scenario where, you can't service any more customers because you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the team to be able to do the onboarding. But it's a horrible problem if you can't fix it. And so what I do with my founders is I talk to them about, okay, we need to have a plan, because we're working together to build the business, to drive forward the revenue, to create more of an inbound engine so that you're getting more of the right people coming to you. How are we going to support those people? Because that momentum will build, and you're then going to be in that position. So what is your hiring strategy? In terms of like your first hire, how much experience are you going to need? Are you going to go with perhaps more junior individuals that will cost less but will need a lot more hand holding and more onboarding? Will you put a bit more investment in to bring in somebody more senior who can take full ownership of that? Will obviously cost you a bit more, but will help you grow. And I think the key thing is really being aware of that, and being able to see further ahead, because sometimes when you're in it, as a founder, it just feels like it's relentless. It's you're on calls till 3 o'clock in the morning. You're, on one hand dealing with this, and then you're talking to the board, and then you're, writing an email, and then you're doing some LinkedIn, and then you're speaking on a webinar or whatever. And it can be a lot to be able to see the wood from the trees. And so part of my job is to really kind of help them take a step back and kind of see the bigger picture and be able to prioritize, like, what are going to be the most important things that are going to help you grow, and what are the things that you need to be measuring in order to be able to show that long-term growth. And whether that's, if you are an enterprise company and, your sales cycle is longer and your deals are much, much bigger, what do you need to be showing your investors to show that there is progress being made? And also to yourself, because sometimes that can feel like a never-ending, soulless task, where you're not seeing the revenue coming in, and the progressions and deals are so slow and minor, that it can be hard to kind of keep yourself motivated. So having a long-term plan, being really clear about what your journey is, what your go-to-market models are, and having a key focus in on all of those little metrics that will help you see how the business is progressing. And in terms of when it's the right time to hire, that's going to be down to you firstly having the funds to be able to hire people, and also being at the right time, because hiring is expensive, but more than that, it's time consuming. And sometimes you can think, well, I can just do it myself. It's far easier for me to do it myself. It's quicker for me to do it myself. And actually, if I bring somebody in, it's going to take longer. I'm going to have to train them. I'm going to have to onboard them and all the rest of it. But what's worse is if you bring the wrong person in. And so in a way, I mean, that's where Hey Gabbi comes in. We are an outsourced marketing function with a B2B SaaS background. So we know all the challenges that come with being a B2B startup. And so until you're ready to start bringing in marketing person number 1, 2, 3, 4, we're basically acting as that kind of extension of your organization, and we're taking ownership of the marketing strategy, working in partnership with the rest of the team or just the founder, depending on how big they are, and making things happen with them.
Wow, that's really awesome to hear, and that brings me to a question. I've listened to all of the episodes of all your podcasts from season 1, episode 1 till now, and I've seen such a progression and an understanding and just an involvement with you today as opposed to when you first started. So, how has this podcast? How is it? It's grown, right? And how has it changed over time? And is it what you expected to be? Here we are in the middle of season 2. Has the podcast delivered what you thought it would? Have you learned what you thought it was? Have your listeners got involved and let you know what they're looking for, and how they're learning from the podcast as well? So talk to me a little bit about the podcast and how that is has evolved over time.
When I started out, I just thought, oh, maybe I'll do 12 episodes and that'll be it. And maybe nobody's going to listen to it. And it's just a fun little project. And I'll be really honest. I've spoken to quite a few people who wanted to start a podcast, and I've just said, just do it. Don't worry about the mechanics. Don't worry about spending money on expensive tech. Like the microphone I use, I've had a couple of years now. I use my AirPods. I use Zoom to record, but I have a great team of editors and graphic designers. But we don't over-engineer it. We don't cut out my filler words of ums and ahs and basically and whatever else I fill in. It's always been authentic. And I guess like most radio DJs, when I first started out, and I probably can't go back and listen to my first episodes because they were horrendous. I think I was probably a bit intimidated by some of the people that I spoke to because they were just so amazing. And every single time I speak to somebody, I'm blown away, no matter what their background is. I'm so inspired by my guests. And I think that's been a big thing that I didn't necessarily think I was going to get as much of that inspiration. I think that's been really, really clear. And getting listener feedback I did not expect to get that. And I feel very lucky whenever somebody comes to me and sort of says, oh, by the way, I listened to your show. I really like it. And first of all, I second guess myself and I'm like, are you talking about my show? And there's people in 27 countries that listen to the show, and by all means, I'm not Stephen Bartlett or any of these big podcast people. And to be fair, I never really set out to do that. The podcast wasn't really about getting loads of listeners and becoming famous and being able to do a pay to play and charge people. It was never about that. It was about creating a community and having a bunch of people learn from each other, me particularly, but also my founders, to be able to share their stories and learn from each other, and also highlight that they talk about Instagram versus reality, or guess LinkedIn versus reality, and that's the fact. Most people are struggling in some way. Something is frustrating them, something is giving them a struggle. Nobody has it easy, and there's always something. And so there's a good thing in sharing those challenges. Of course you want to present your company in the best light. Of course you want to tell people that you're making loads of money and your product is selling to this many logos and all the rest of it. But having that authenticity from people saying, we pivoted so many times because we didn't really know what we were doing. Actually we started doing this and then we switched there, and, we changed the company name, and, the website's terrible or whatever. Everybody has something. I think the surprise that I found as I was going through season 1, because obviously I started with my network, but then also started to do some outbounding and also got some great referrals and people coming to me wanting to be on the show, was how hard it was to find female founders. And they're out there, of course, but there are few and far between. And so I kind of made it my mission for season 2, to really go out and find as many female founders and really understand what the differences are, but also what makes them tick and what their experiences are. And there's been a real mix of their experiences. I mean, on the whole, it's tougher to get funding. It's harder to have a seat at the table. You're not taken as seriously. And there's a whole host of reasons and challenges and lots of stories on the podcast around that. But I think there's also a lot of great passion and a lot of great insights that help other male founders and other people really see a different perspective. So, the podcast has evolved, it's changed. Where it's going to be, and this has been a thought of mine since day one, was I want to follow all of these founders. This isn't just a one episode and we're done. I want to keep following all of the founders on their journeys. And because we've got people from like week 1, week 2, like really early stage, I've just quit my job, and to people that are on their like 3rd or 4th startup, they've had exits already. Like there's really a mix of people. But my joy as we end season 2, I think it'll end in February next year in 2026, we're actually going to start going back to season 1 guests and checking in with them. I know there's some amazing story. Sneak peek, spoiler alert, I know quite a few of them have already had like new funding, they've grown their team, they've brought out new products, that so many great stories, and some of them have actually moved on. That startup wasn't the right thing for them, which they've learned so much, and then they've perhaps started another one or found a new founder, or actually decided to shift technologies altogether. And that's the nature of the business. And I think, to me, because I'm really invested in their journey, hearing, going back to those season 1 guests and talking to them about what they've learned in the last year and what's happened, and kind of seeing that journey, and then checking in with them again in 2027, which seems a million years away, but it'll fly by. I know it does. That to me is really interesting, and funnily enough, even though that was in my mind from kind of day one, quite a few people have said, oh, great idea, why don't you go back and speak to those guests? And I'm like, it's already there, it's gonna happen. Because I think my listeners are also invested in certain stories as well, and want to check in and see what these people are doing beyond what's going on LinkedIn and press releases, but really hear from the founders.
Yeah, I love the community that you're building. I know as a member of the community as well, I'm just really interested. And I didn't think that over time, all of the different founders that you have had on, the things that I would learn from all of that. So as part of, I just realized we're about at time. So for the last question, with all of the founders that you have interviewed over these past 2 seasons, what is the one piece of advice, for new founders that you would, let them know?
Wow. Well, I mean, I usually ask them for what their advice is, rather than me giving them advice. And I think the common advice is to have the confidence to get out there and do what scares you. I think of my own business journey, and pretty much every day I'm doing something that scares me. And I think that for most founders, especially first-time founders, but even those that have done it before, they're still stretching themselves and pushing themselves. And I think if you're continuing to do something that's a little bit uncomfortable and you're comfortable being uncomfortable, which was a phrase that a previous manager of mine used to say a lot, it really helps you grow. And I think as a founder, or even as a leader in an organization, growth is the most important thing. It's not just growth for the business, but growth as individuals. When we stop growing professionally, when we stop learning, we get bored, or we're just not adding value. And so that continuous growth, that curiosity to learn more, learn from other people, adapt. And, it's not just about reading, although that's a great area to look at, but, networking with people and, going and listening to other perspectives, but also being really open-minded and being aware that your circle, your network are probably a lot of people like you. So breaking outside of that to meet people that are not like-minded necessarily, or from the same, trail of thought or school of experience as you, or perhaps you're a commercial leader and you really want to dig in more on the technical side, or you're a technical leader and you really want to learn more about the commercials. I think that continuous curiosity and push for growth is key for every founder and every leader. And I would always say, keep pushing forward, keep doing something that makes you uncomfortable, keep learning. Because at the end of the week, at the end of the year, when you're thinking back and you're having those moments and you're reflecting on what's worked, what hasn't worked, the things that you'll be most proud of are the things that you've done that were scary, the things that have pushed you outside of your comfort zone, the things that, you thought, oh my gosh, I'm terrible at this, or this isn't going to work. Those are going to be the things that stand out far more than the stuff that's tried and trusted.
That's great advice for all of us, right? Not just tech startup founders, but for all of us. So unfortunately, we're at the end of our time.
We are.
Anything you want to leave the listeners with?
Well, firstly, thank you so much for being my guest host. You did an amazing job. I think I'm out of a job now. Yeah, I mean, I'm so excited for the second half of this season. We have some incredible founders, not just women. There's some amazing women, some gents as well, again, from all over the world. More stories to come, and we're going to take a little break. We're going to take the New Year's week off because everyone deserves a break every now and then. There's plenty of episodes for people to go back to listen to. If you've missed any, sign up, subscribe. There's plenty of content available, and yeah, look forward to finishing season 2 with some amazing guests, and then leaping into season 3 where we revisit our season 1 guests and see what's happened to them in the last 12 months, and learn their journey.
I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you very much for your time, and let's end the podcast.
Thanks, Donna.
That's it for this episode of Tech Startup Stories. Have a story you'd like us to share or a topic you'd want to cover? Reach out and we'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.